Hello, Math 112 fans. I want to do some start of the quarter reflections, sort of like a newsletter. I won't do this that often, but a few times just kind of take an assessment of where we are. At this point, you now have done the first group of homework. Some are starting to grumble, which is normal. This was a lot of time. Actually, when I looked at the data, I was surprised. It was more time than I thought it would take people to do this. Now, it was 2 weeks of work, and that's why I so strongly emphasized working on it last week. And if you use the lab, this comes out to about what I told you the expectations would be, that you would spend your 2 designated hours in the lab and then 1 hour out of the lab. I know it's a lot of time, and I have students that are frustrated, and this is an average, but you now see how you have to plan to do your work. This was a lot for 1 week if you waited to start. That's why I was emailing people last week to start this in the lab. In these 2 in particular, it's always harder in the first week. It won't take this much time. A week's worth of homework will be a shorter amount of time than this, but this is the start, and now you can plan and adjust. Okay? Now, a few little notes here. If you found you were in over your head and you want to get caught up, I do want to remind you of the policies. You can click on past assignments, and you still can get, now we're already 2 days away from when these were, but I think there's still a day left. You can request automatic extension, accept. So that's all automated. For 9-3, that would only give you 1 more day, because it only gives you 3 days past the original due date. For these ones, you could get 3 days. There's a small penalty, and you're only penalized for the part you didn't do. I cannot make that extension longer. The first time I ever did this, I made it 5 days, and there was like a collection of like 40% of the class that was always 5 days behind, and they did terrible on all the exams. I feel bad even doing the 3-day extension. We've only been doing this basically since COVID. Before that, we never had extensions for any homework. And in some ways, that was better, because now we have a collection of students that are always a little behind. So you really need to be working. Students that are behind, they probably haven't started 9-6. So it is, now that you know kind of the theme, it is vital that you start 9-6 tomorrow. Okay, I'll say a few more things about that, but the other thing I want to say is efficiency and resources. Okay, so first, you should be coming to class. In lecture, I will do problems. I've been trying, when I notice people are struggling with something, I'll try to make an extra little video or practice sheet. My materials page has stuff like that. You don't really need to go searching, but you should start the homework before the lab. Complete a few problems, do it after class, after lecture, go sit down, do a handful of questions. So really the desired structure is a routine. Students that do well tend to have a routine, meaning some chunk of time on the day we cover something where you open the homework and work on it for 15 minutes. That can be extremely valuable, because then when you go into the lab the next day, you have questions ready. So I'm not asking for a lot of time, but some time. If you go into the lab and it's the first time you've opened the homework, you kind of wasted a chunk of time. Now remember, the lab is open from 8:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Tuesdays and Thursdays. So you could sit there and work, but you should spend some time out of there. Okay, next week, the 9-8 homework is really short. So even though this may look like a lot, this is less homework. And then you will see as we go further, things stretch out. We're in the intense piece of the course because we're learning these rules for how to do derivatives. Things will spread out more as we get further into it. The ideas might be bigger, but the homework won't take as long. Okay, so there's lots of resources there. Besides the lab, your one big resource is the discussion board. And a lot of people didn't use this. In the first week, I posted videos where I did several of the problems to try to save you time. Yet a lot of people missed those problems. So that's something you can fix in the future. It might be advisable to glance at the discussion board before you get too dug into your problems. A lot of people asked me about this one. I did it and made a video. A lot of students missed problem 7-8 on this homework, even though I'd already posted a video about how to do it. So I think that is an efficiency that would cut down on a lot of this time. If you do a problem, you do one submission, then you should stop, check the discussion board, set it to the side for the lab, just be efficient. And I should note, these are the times that students had the homework open. It doesn't mean they were working the whole time. They could have been having dinner with the homework open. So these numbers tend to be a little high. But you can see how you click homework, you can click on the side. I also will sometimes post general things of interest, extra videos and things. So you can check that out. But if you just click on homework, look at that, 9-4. There's the problems that got asked. I made a video on problem 16 because people were asking about it. I made a video about problem 13. I'm trying to do the homework with you. You don't have to feel buried. Okay? I hope that makes sense. I'm giving some answers, but the homework is a discussion, but it requires you put time into it. Okay? 9-5. I noticed some students I made a couple of videos based off of things I saw. Like students were submitting answers that didn't make sense. So there's some issues with approach I'm noticing, and so I wanted to catch those now. And hopefully you watched those or made a note of this I don't need to keep resubmitting. There's a structure to my work where I can know that everything is right and there's just one thing I need to do. That's what you're trying to do, is build these routines. And I'll do a few problems to end this. Okay? So that's where we're all at right now, is that. And so you now know all of that. And so by the end of tomorrow, you should have made progress in 9-6. And you already can see there's a bunch of things to get you going if you're stuck. Okay. In addition, if you're just more lost, like you really need a thorough going through, I have review sheets for that. So that's what these are for. Is like if you're someone that needs to be stepped through in a lot of detail for a couple of examples, then read one of my questions, try it out on my practice sheet, and then you can see the detail. This is why I made these years ago. I wasn't required to. It's because I was trying to help students. So you go into 9-7, you could say, okay, he's discussing how to do the derivative, yet another perspective. He's giving me an example. I can try it on my own, and then you can see I did it in excruciating steps with how I wrote it out and how I thought through it. Okay. That's when you know where your question is and when you can dive in and work on that. Okay. So that's what you're trying to do, is figure out where those questions are and build a routine. And this will get better. It'll naturally get better, but we're at this hot moment where some students are really struggling. I've emailed all the students that didn't do one of the homework assignments. If you got one of those emails, please don't be offended. I want to catch you now. Especially students that I noticed didn't open these homework assignments until the second week. I basically emailed them and said, go talk to an academic advisor and take a class you're more passionate about. If you need this class for your reasons, remember that. But if you aren't starting the homework early enough, it's just not going to go well. So that's my approach. You don't have to love my course. I don't feel like that's my job here. I will try to make it enjoyable. I hope I do. But, if you want, UW is a place where you can study lots of things. Go find something else you'd be more passionate about rather than have me keep bugging you to start your homework. Use your money wisely. Talk to an academic advisor. But I'm going to keep bugging you if you don't open your homework. Okay. So those are the things. You should be organized. I saw this posting. I'm stealing from chemistry here, but they have a nice page on effective group work. How to set an agenda. So if you're someone that's really struggling, form a study group with 3 or 4 of your classmates. If you're someone where it's routine, help in the lab. By helping others, you will learn it even better. Help others on the discussion board. When you hear students next to you complaining about something, see if you can help them or point them to a resource you've found. There is no curve here. If the person next to you does well, it's not going to hurt you. So let's work together as a community. I'm one person with 240 students. I have a lot of advice that I think will help, but sometimes a kind word from a classmate will do a lot more than anything else I can do. All right. So I will finish this by saying a few things. And again, I didn't make you take this course. I don't know why you have to take this course. I think calculus is interesting, and I will make the case for it all along. But if you don't want it to be interesting, it won't be, and you don't have to learn it. You don't have to ever use it again. This is not my goal. My goal is to get you to wherever you need to go. For some reason, you're in this class, and I want to help you get to wherever you want to go. Okay? And for now, that involves understanding some very basic things. So these are some of the most, I looked at the data, some of the most missed homework questions, meaning people used 5 submissions on these. So I just wanted to recap about these. I made a separate, if you're struggling with this problem, it's that you're struggling with fractions and power exponent rules. Now, based off of seeing this, I made this little video about how do you do coefficients, and it's got I do 40 examples in 3 minutes. So if you just needed to see a whole bunch of them, because it's not hard what we're about to do. First, you have to recognize that, sorry, my mouse is doing something weird. You have to recognize what the coefficients are. So let's talk about coefficients. This is 3 times 1 over x to the 5th. That is the exact same as having a 3 on top. This is 2 times 1 over x squared. And this is 6 times the cube root of x. That's step 1. If you're struggling with that at all, watch my little video about coefficients. That's going to be throughout everything we do this term, so we need that now. Secondly, we need to know our exponent rules. X to the negative 5, 2x to the negative 2, 6x to the 1/3. It is alarming if someone didn't get this correct in 5 submissions. It's alarming when anyone uses more than 2 submissions. The goal of 5 submissions is not to, once it's wrong, just start guessing and changing around numbers. I'm getting all sorts of messages that saying WebAssign doesn't understand my answer, and then I look at their work and their work's wrong. I haven't encountered one situation yet where WebAssign didn't accept an answer because of some clerical thing. It's always because there's something wrong with the answer. I'm sure eventually I'll come across one, but I haven't yet this term. So let's get past the idea of WebAssigns being mean to me and focus on looking at our work and checking it ourselves. We need to get to the point that when we enter it and hit submit, we know with 100% certainty that it's going to be correct. Now, will there be the occasional time you mistype something? Yes, but it should be very occasional. Okay, and I don't know if that's, I'm not trying to be mean or anything. That's just, this is what a calculus student unfortunately has to do. I have students telling me that's hard. Is it? I don't know. But watch this video, and that should just become routine. The next step, and this is what I've been trying to do in class, is give you the organizational skills. I'm doing it always the same way. I'm always setting it up the same way, and I'm hoping you do that as well. Okay, so now you should know with this one rule, which we've been doing a bunch of, which is to bring down the power, bring down the power, bring down the power, and subtract 1. So I'm going to do it all in one now because we've done this so much. So I'm going to bring down the negative 5, which is going to make this negative 15. And I'm going to subtract 1. I'm going to bring down the negative 2, which makes it negative 4. And I'm going to subtract 1. I'm going to bring down the 1/3, which is going to make it 6 times 1/3. I'm going to use the margins here to explain, which is just 2. And then I think the most common error here is just students struggling with the idea of how do you do 1/3 minus 1. But hopefully not, it's negative 2/3. There's a moment when you stop and you do an inspection. What do I mean by an inspection? So you stop and say, did the power go down 1? Did the power go down 1? Did the power go down 1? What I've been seeing in submissions is students they'll try a negative 3, then they'll try a negative 1. And they're like wasting tries when the issue is actually they miscopied a number elsewhere. And yes, if you just randomly keep changing one number throughout until you hope to get right, you're not going to get it right in 5 tries. But you shouldn't be doing that. The exams are worth a lot more than your test, and you can't on an exam just randomly throw numbers at the dartboard. So I think people are missing this. Your goal in this class is not to get all the homework done. If you've missed 5% of the homework, you still get 100%. The goal is to understand. The goal is to be able to get it right in one submission. So if you don't get it right in one submission, that should raise an alarm. Like you should put a huge star there and say, I need to come back to this. I didn't get it right in one submission. So I would encourage you to open up the homework and look at all the questions you didn't get right in one submission. Especially note the ones that you didn't get right in 2 submissions. If any questions took you 3 submissions, you should make like a poster of that and put it up and make sure you never make that error again. 3 submissions means there's a major problem going on. So when someone messages me and says, I've used 5 submissions, will you give me another try? We're past the problem. And I don't mean that to be negative. I just know what students need to do to be successful. And on an exam, you don't get submissions. Okay, just want to keep saying that. Okay, because again, the goal is for you to be successful on the exams, which will get you to whatever goal you want to do. All right, and if you're not into this, take another course that gains your interest. Why study something you're not interested in? Okay, so step 1, write the coefficient. So a lot of students miss this. Again, it's this step. And then they did this, 256. So I think maybe the issue here was that it required 2 steps to do this. I'm not sure. If you're having trouble with that piece, again, watch my video on coefficient and exponents. You can see that the majority of work we do here is algebra. That stuff was where we spent most of our time. The calculus rule piece is a very small piece. Okay, so we're going to do 256 p to the negative 1/2 minus 1. And again, I think that can become routine for everyone in the class. Watch my video here about coefficient and exponent rules. Do it until it's just routine. You got it. Okay, the derivative of 1 is 0. That might be something you're having to kind of practice, but you've now done it probably a dozen times, so maybe it's getting easier. We're going to bring this down. So it's going to be 256 times negative 1/2. 256 divided by 2. 128. So it's going to be negative 128. And I think the other issue was it's always these subtracting. Negative 1/2 minus 1 is negative 1/2 minus 2/2, which is negative 3/2. That's it. So again, these are the ones, and when I talk about this, I'm talking about maybe 40% of the class. Of 240 students, it's always like 50 or 60% are getting it right in 1 or 2 submissions, and then 40% or 30% are getting it wrong in 5 submissions. So I want to bridge that gap, but if you're someone in the group that's getting it right in the first submission, and you see a student next to you doing many submissions, help them. It'll be your good deed. And if I see you doing it, I'll bring you some candy or something. Help each other. That's going to be more valuable than anything else you do. Okay, this one was commonly missed in the 9-5 homework. Quite a few people got this wrong in 5 submissions. I already made a separate video on this, answering a student question. But this is a good example of where routine will help you. This is a product rule question. Again, you automatically do this without even thinking, because you're a calculus student. You write this as the 1/3. You write this 2x to 1/2. That's the big message I was sending out last week, and it's the message you can review in this video. I made this series of videos where I broke down the derivative as fine as I could for people that need to go a little deeper, but this is the key one, which is what I just did. Okay, what bothered me when I was looking at the errors students made was the lack of organization. I saw people submitting all sorts of different things. And that doesn't make sense. If you do more than one submission, your submission should look almost identical. What do I mean by that? Well, it should be first times the derivative of the second plus the derivative of the first times the second. And you know that every time I did this in class, I wrote this down without thinking. I wrote down the first, I wrote down the second, kind of way over here, give myself some space. Minus 2x to the 1/2 plus 7. And then I put parentheses here. Every single time I did this, I put parentheses here. I put a plus between them. That's what the rule says. First times the second plus the derivative first times the second. So when I go through and people send me a message and say, WebAssign's not accepted my answer, and I look at their work and I don't see this, and I don't see this, or they have many submissions and the submissions have things written in different orders, that's a bigger issue to me. There shouldn't be any submissions that don't have that. That's a quick thing you can visually inspect. Sometimes people had typos, like they mistyped the 3 and the 7. Visually, you should be able to see that this is in the first spot. So there's this moment, this is what you're practicing, stepping back and looking at it. Is it right? Can we sometimes make small typos? Yes, but not on every problem. It shouldn't be a regular occurrence. Okay, so we have 2 more jobs to do. The derivative of the first is probably the easiest because it's going to be 2x plus 1. The other thing I saw was when students would make an error, they would then go and change stuff here and there and there, and it doesn't make sense to me. At this point, I know, I am confident, I would bet $500. So maybe that's the way you should say it. Would I bet $100 that I am right so far? And you need to get to a point where you'd be willing to bet you are right so far. And then you're just down to one thing. So every single submission will have all those other pieces. You'll type it in exactly like that. I have students that get it wrong and then they try to simplify because they think the issue is simplification. But I've said several times, WebAssign will accept it if it's equivalent. It's not simplification. So don't try to simplify and submit the same thing. That's just wasted submissions. Okay, so the only job left to do is the derivative of this. And that's a routine example. I know it's fractions, but you bring down the power. Just write it over here so you can sort of think about it. I need to do 1/3 minus 1. And you're probably getting better at this and getting faster as you go. You're doing 1/3 minus 3/3, so it's negative 2/3. This one, a half is going to come down, so it's 2 times a half, so it's going to be minus 1. And then I need to do 1/2 minus 1, which is negative half. And the derivative of 7 is 0. So is this a hard question or not? Again, the students that missed, a lot of people missed this in 5 tries. That's something I'm having trouble understanding, and so I want you to think about that a little bit. Why am I missing that in 5 tries? Because that's the important reflection that needs to happen. And when I pull up someone's assignment and I don't see these things, I already know there's a problem, because there's no way we would enter a submission that didn't have those 3 pieces immediately. Because I think 2 of them are just copied, and one of them was a fairly quick derivative. Anyways, so the only thing I slowed down on was the derivative of that term. So your routine, your organization, that's what you're working on. So when you go to take the test, because what happens on the test is, again, 50 or 60% of the people ace it. They get this question easily. And then the other ones, when I go to grade, there's stuff all over the place, which indicates they're trying to approach the exam in the same way they're approaching the homework. We need to switch it. So we're going to be preparing for the exam, preparing to show understanding. No guessing. Okay, last one. A few people missed this. I think people that missed this just missed that part of the lecture because we did this in class. But just to recap, the equation of the tangent line, the equation of any line looks like this. You have 3 things you need to find. You need to give the x value, but they told us that. You need to find the height or the y value, the corresponding y value. So the height at x equals 1. And that we can get right away by just plugging into the function. So it's 6 times 1 squared. I do know there's a side issue in problems like this that there some students have challenges with plugging into their calculator. I discussed that in the initial video of the term, which is don't try to plug everything in your calculator, especially when the numbers are so nice here. Simplify anything you can easily simplify. This is 3. This is 6 minus 6 plus 3. So I wouldn't even use a calculator because it's going to be 3, because that's 0 times 3, 9. I think people don't realize how much faster it is not to use a calculator. By the time you find the calculator, I'm already done. Okay, there are times for a calculator, but we shouldn't be reaching for it to do 6 minus 6, you know. We need to practice that. Okay, so then we have a product rule. We need the derivative because this is the slope. And we're trying to find the slope. Okay, so here we go. We're going to do first. This is that routine I'm talking about. It's because of this routine that I can do it while I'm talking and do it with such confidence. And I'd like you to be able to do the same. So I need to just copy down the first. I could do it under distress. I could do it in many situations because I am organized. In many parts of my life, I'm not organized. I like that we can do this here. So now I need the derivative of the second, which is just 2. And I need the derivative of the first, which is 12x minus 6. Done. The question wanted to know what the slope was when you plugged in 1. So we're back to this idea of plugging in 1. What is the slope when we plug in 1? Again, I would never plug all that in the calculator because this is 0 plus 3, so it's 3, times 2 is 6. This is 12 minus 6, which is 6, times 3. So it's 6 plus 18, 24. So that is one of those questions that a lot of students missed. They did 5 tries and they still got it wrong. That's a good example of if you had gone to the discussion board, you would have seen me do it. That's also, there's several examples in my review sheets. Okay, so I wanted you to get the feeling for this. So go back and look at the homework. Reflect on what went well, what didn't. Reflect on how you used your time. Try to not be too frustrated with if things took you lots of time, because that's an issue. If this course is not for you, go talk to an academic advisor. Now is the time to do that rather than let things linger. But you now know you need to be working on 9.6 and 9.7 in the days ahead. And you need to be coming back and asking on the discussion board. And you can already see I have a ton of 9.6 posts already. So if you're someone that really struggled with the last homework, then maybe a place would be take some of my tips. I do problem 2. I do problem 3. I do problem 3 again. I do problem 11. I do 12. I do 13. Don't rely on it too much, though, because at some point you have to internalize it. I'm happy to answer several questions on there because I know it's on you to make sure you know it for a test. And I'm trying to move people along. I'm trying to deal with the ones that are messaging me saying it's too hard. I'm giving them a pathway. But there you go. Hope some of that helps. This is I'm trying to get everyone on the same page here because I always have some people that are frustrated with me or frustrated with the course, and I'm trying to show you how you can be successful. Let's all get through this. Let's do this together. Hopefully you find some enjoyment in this. Ultimately, things will get more fun, but right now we need our derivative rule.